Are you wondering if you actually need a lawyer for your divorce? Are you worried that if you spend too much money on a lawyer now, you might not be able to afford one later on if you have to go to court? Are you worried if you use a lawyer, it might make your ex worse? Because most people think there's only two options when it comes to using a lawyer. That's full representation where the lawyer does everything, or you just don't get one at all. But that's not actually the truth. So today we're going to be talking about lawyers and the 3 ways we think you can use them and the way you should approach choosing a lawyer and how you use them based on your divorce personality type. Because you don't necessarily need a lawyer for the entire journey, but you do need a strategy. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone.
It's going to be a little bit awkward for you, Mum, because today's episode topic is, do you need a mum for when you're going through divorce? But we're not insulting lawyers. And again, Mum is a lawyer and she's a very experienced one. But this is what we've seen over time. This is what I've experienced over my divorce. I am not a lawyer. Mum is a lawyer, but she's not your lawyer. So please get your own independent legal advice before you make any decisions based on your particular situation. Let's get into the jingle and let's get started. Okay. Hello, I'm Laura, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. So, Mum, there's this massive myth that you either just have a lawyer or you don't, and there's no in between.
It's kind of all or nothing thinking, isn't it?
Yes. And it's not something that you really sit down when you have clients and say, well, this is, you can use me completely or you can just use me a little bit. Lawyers don't have those conversations with clients, do they?
Oh, no, I think some lawyers do. I do.
Good ones.
Good ones, yep. And if you go to see a lawyer and they don't talk about costs, then I'd be scared because they're embarrassed about it or they're not being upfront. But hopefully some lawyers have that conversation. But if our listeners go to a lawyer who doesn't, they can initiate that conversation.
And I guess the myth probably also stems from, the only interactions people have with lawyers, apart from if they are one, is what they see on TV, what they see in the news, and, that in those movies, they're always ringing their lawyer, always at their lawyer's office, and it's very in-depth, and the lawyer has just one case and it's theirs. One of the things that we're seeing from people who are making that mistake is that some of them, unfortunately, do have to go to court because not every case goes to family court. But they are spending all their money on lawyers in that space at the beginning where they really, really need a lawyer in court. But in the early stages, spending too much money on lawyers can actually backfire.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to defend lawyers, but I think the processes that the court has put in place, being very front-end heavy with disclosure and attempts to mediate, means that it's a lot more expensive than it used to be to do all the things you've got to do before you go to court. So that does with some people, that burns up a lot of their money. But of course, there's ways you can do that to limit it. And do you really need a lawyer?
We'll look at the different divorce personality types and how they need to consider, the things they need to consider for if they need to use a lawyer at that specific stage.
Yep.
But before we get to that, to get to one of the cruxes of the questions, do you need a lawyer? What are the 2 most critical must-do times that you say people should see a lawyer?
Okay, so if you're in family law dispute or you're separated from your partner, and you haven't seen a lawyer yet, you need to go and see a lawyer ASAP to know where you stand. And for anyone else, if you're thinking about separating or if you've just separated, as soon as you can, go and see a lawyer and find out where you stand overall in the property settlement so that you know what you're working towards, okay?
All right. If you go and see a lawyer to find out where you stand, does that mean they're your lawyer forever and you have to be stuck with them and that's it?
No. So you have to find a lawyer, and there are lots of them who will do a one-off appointment with you, usually pay on the day or prior to the going in, and you don't sign up a costs agreement with them. You just see them that one time. And in that time, at least I used to size up the client and see if they were the sort of people I wanted to work with. And the client sizes up the lawyer. And, the personalities may not match or they may be fine. So it's just, that's a one-off, right? And that's like a little taster.
So that's early. You go and do that right at the start. Why is that important to do it at the start?
Yeah, I think people lose a lot of sleep wondering and worrying about what the outcomes are likely to be, or they might be listening to their ex who's telling them what their percentage property is or what the kids are going to do. But also the other side of that coin is one of the, listeners, our people may have unrealistic expectations about court, and someone's got to burst that little balloon early so that you have a reasonable idea of what you've got and what you're expecting, so you're not worrying and you're not having any false hopes either. And then with that kind of, I guess, a layer of reality on you, you're better able then to negotiate to an outcome. And it does kind of take some of the emotion away as well.
It also stops you from doing those circular arguments or arguing about things that wouldn't legally be allowed to happen anyway. So let's get to the second time you said you definitely should see a lawyer. When's that? Before
you put a pen to paper to sign off on orders, or before you send an offer that it might get accepted, so you need to be careful. I mean, some people don't go and see those lawyers at those occasions, but they should, because if you're making consent orders, for instance, the court's going to look at them, and if they're not done properly, they will send them back out, and that causes all sorts of angst, because will your ex sign the amendments and all of that, and you'll have to go and get a lawyer to help you with that. So, yes, I think the only time you don't really need a lawyer when you're putting pen to paper is if you're doing a parenting plan, because that is never filed in the court and it's not legally binding.
So you need to see that the lawyer, definitely mum says those 2 times. Mm-hmm. Firstly, to tell you where you stand so you know what you are going to be arguing for.
Yes.
So you're not arguing for no reason or negotiating for no reason. And then number 2, before you sign anything, so you actually know what you're signing, because you only get one chance at it, don't you, Mum?
That's right. And I mean, people do have goes at lawyers, and, I'm used to it. People go, oh, you lawyers. But in reality, I mean, we are very well trained. And so while ChatGPT may say something is a perfectly good document and it looks okay to you and to your ex, the reality is if a lawyer looks at it and something will leap out at them that you wouldn't realise isn't there. So, but you don't have to go and see the same lawyer each time either. You can go and see another lawyer to just run their eye over your proposed orders, or you might engage a lawyer to, help you draft the orders and so forth.
Okay. And that's the 2 times you could go. So there's 3 ways we've talked about. The first way is the first class ride, where you just give it all over to them. Do stupidly what I did, like we talked about in the last episode, where I just turned up with 2 Woolies bags of their filing cabinet emptied into and just handed over. Here you go. Please sort that out. So first class ride, you sit back and you let the lawyer do everything. Ironically enough, though, Mum, even if your lawyer does everything, they're still emailing you asking you to do stuff anyway.
Because there's that. I mean, a lot of the information that they want is only within your knowledge, or you've got records of it and you can access it. And also, at the end of the day, you have to make decisions whether to make an offer. It's up to you to decide whether to accept an offer. So when you look at it, you are instructing a lawyer, not the other way around. So it kind of like a first class ride maybe, but you're still needed in the co-pilot seat. And when a push comes to shove, I'm going to mix up all my metaphors here. If push comes to shove in mediation, or when there's an offer comes through, it's like you're the only one in the cockpit flying, because they can't make that decision for you. They can advise you, but at the end of the day, it's you.
Okay. So there's that first class ride, and then there's those 2 times you just go and see a lawyer, and then there's one in the middle that also people don't talk about, and we call it step in, step out. Can you describe to me what step in, step out means?
Okay. So step in, step out is a term that is used for when lawyers are there in the background. You may have even signed a costs agreement with them, but you don't use them to do everything. So you do as much as you possibly can yourself, and then maybe they'll step in when it's time to go to mediation. Can you come with me to mediation? Or it might be that if you have to go to court, they might come and do that one court appearance for you. But it allows you to do the stuff that isn't really requiring a lawyer. But some people do that, and that's really using your resources wisely.
All right. So there's those 3 ways. So if you haven't had a little think about, if you think it's just all or nothing, well, then it's time to realize there's actually some other ways.
It's a continuum. And if you've got a lawyer, if you find a lawyer who won't do step in, step out, find another lawyer. Check with them before you engage them, because they're progressive firms, progressive lawyers who really understand how expensive it all is and will be offering those options. I'm sure there are people in every state, law firms in every state, Laura, that's offering those options.
So let's talk about the divorce personality types and how using a lawyer can be affected by that. So let's start with the big poopy yucky one, and that's manipulative and controlling. So if you're listening for the first time, our manipulative and controlling types, they're the narcissistic types, they're the coercive controlling types. They're trying to control the process, and their goal necessarily isn't to come to an agreement. So the problem with having a lawyer with a manipulative and controlling is sometimes they deliberately try to drag out the negotiations.
Not the lawyer.
No, the ex, if they're manipulative and controlling. So they will send constant letters and accusations. They will try and drag out negotiations. They will force your lawyer to write unnecessary letters. They will delay disclosure. What else will they do,
They
Mum?
drip feed disclosure, bit at a time. They might make counter accusations against you that you, in fact, are the one coercively controlling them. Other things that they do is they say outrageous things that you have to respond. And then don't forget my triple F, which is 5 to 5 on Friday. The email gets sent to your lawyer, and if your lawyer sends it to you, it's a double banger for them because they've cost you money. And if your lawyer just flips it to you without any explanation, you've got 2 days to worry about it till your law firm opens again. So those are all signs.
Sometimes it's a strategy for a manipulative and controlling to run up your legal fees. But you need to think about, how do I use my lawyer strategically so I'm not spending $1 bazillion and I'm not letting my manipulative and controlling ex run up those legal fees? Mum, what should people be thinking about talking to their lawyer, or think how to use a lawyer when they've got someone who's trying to run up legal fees? Yeah,
in the past, I'd have a client who we would agree that I would notify the other side I wasn't acting anymore. I'd direct them to send all of their emails to the client direct, so I wasn't in the loop. And then my client would ask me the questions if anything came through that was concerning. And the cases where this really stands out is where they're arguing about where they're picking up or when they're dropping off, or they're arguing about what the furniture is going to be, or, how can I get my furniture? All the really silly stuff, which is just argumentative, meant to get in your head. Then my clients would do that. And I sometimes get them to sign an indemnity, but there are ways, where I understood I wasn't acting in that stage. And if they needed me, they'd contact me. So instead of paying $66 for every one of these letters, they only asked me about the letter that mattered.
So basically, trying not to get pulled into daily spats and making it daily legal warfare. So if you, like Mum said, if you're arguing over pick up and drop off time for next weekend, having a lawyer write that letter for you, because there's going to be one there, one back again there. That's going to cost you a couple of grand just then if there's a couple of letters.
Well, a couple of $100 at least.
Yeah, but if it's a whole backwards and forwards between their lawyer, your lawyer, etc. But if you can, through a parenting platform, so like Our Children or My Family Wizard, if you can communicate and do the discussions with your ex through that, instead of needing a lawyer to write the letter, you can save yourself a lot of money. And we have an episode called Bombarded with Legal Letters that you can go listen to if you want. And another example is if you're going to mediation and you want to take your lawyer, but you know deep down that your manipulative and controlling ex is only going to mediation to continue to manipulate and control you with no intention of settling whatsoever, which we've got a episode you can listen to as well. It's probably not worth taking your lawyer with you to that.
Yeah, that's right. And also we talk about having a half a day. I don't believe it's almost never necessary to take a barrister, even if they have, right? Because a good mediator should stop you being bullied, if you are, by the legal team on the other side, or even, I guess, intimidated by the barrister on the other side. It's a weird thing taking barristers to mediation now, and it's become, I think, a bit of a bad habit from solicitors who should be able to do that work themselves.
But you need to be thinking, is it worth taking and paying for a lawyer and a barrister if I know for a fact that my ex is just going to be playing a game with me in this, but you have to go to mediation? These are the questions. So sometimes, again, that's that step in, step out approach where you can say, hey, I'm just going to go do the mediation myself. I'll call you if I get an agreement.
If I get it. And the other thing you might do is you say, hey, I want you to come to the mediation with me, but I'm going to do all of the preparation documents leading up to the mediation as set out in the central practice direction. So I'll do all that and you come along for the mediation. But if you know you've got manipulative and controlling, it's going to be normally a waste of money. And I've seen cases over the years where it feels like you're making progress, and then at the end you find out they've left the room or they won't agree and won't sign, and you've wasted a day. They haven't, because they're loving it.
Money. Yeah.
They love it, and they know how much money, but you will be exhausted and no outcome. And
go and listen to mediation or manipulation, or do you need to take a lawyer to a mediation? We've got those episodes. I'll put them in the links. What about high conflict, Mum? These are the people, if anyone hasn't listened before, high conflict exes, these are the ones that will argue that the sky is purple. They just want to fight. They're just a fighty person.
Well, the thing with the high conflict is they do argue everything, and it's at a snail's pace. If they argue a point, then you've got to email back, or your lawyer has to email back, and then they'll raise something else and your lawyer has to, because we know, right, facts are king when it comes to high conflict. And if you're sending a piece of information over to disabuse them of their wrong idea every time, that can get very expensive and
with a lawyer.
Slow.
Yes.
But in a mediation, if you take all of your documents, right, it can be in 2 Woolies bags or whatever you need, then the arguing becomes more condensed and it's more efficient.
So what Mum's trying to say, I guess, is that, you know, the high conflict person's going to react to letters from your lawyer. They're going to be emotional. They're going to try and fight everything. And there's going to be lots of arguing. And as Mum said, you've got to prove it with facts. And by providing that factual document to your lawyer, that's going to cost you money because they're going to read it. Then your lawyer's going to write that letter to the ex to dispute that fact with the evidence. And that's going to cost you money. Then they're going to write back in a reactional way, probably, and it's a very long process. And so Mum's pointing out, yeah, sure, go to mediation with a high conflict person. Take all your facts. Leave your lawyers behind if that's what's best for you, and then have that argument in a controlled room in a day, as opposed to spread out over hundreds of dollars of worth of legal letters. It's really important how you spend your money with lawyers, arguing about the important issues, not arguing about things that don't change anything that you could maybe prove in mediation. So let's get to the avoidant types, Mum. These ones stick their head in the sand. They don't want to face the facts. They don't want to negotiate. They don't want to really do anything. They probably won't even open a letter from a lawyer. And sometimes I think, Mum, correct me if I'm wrong, lawyers might make the avoidant person more avoidant. If you're separated or about to be and you need to get everything finalised and sorted but you don't know what to do next, or you're looking for a way to do your own divorce and settlement without spending thousands of dollars on lawyer, then you already know what you need to do, and that is to sign up and become a member of the DIY Divorce Blueprint. Empower, educate and equip yourself with the legal know-how and the tools you need to get divorced or de facto separated and finally settle. Work through this course at your own pace without feeling confused, lost, scared or overwhelmed of all the family law legal jargon and processes. Let us walk with you through this journey and show you a better way. And sometimes I think, Mum, correct me if I'm wrong, lawyers might make the avoidant person more avoidant.
Yes, it's not the lawyers themselves, I think. It's the nature of the way they communicate. So in our course law, we talk about this. An avoidant person, and it might be you, like it could be you that's listening to us, you get an email from the law firm and that's enough to set your heart pounding, right? No matter what it's about. And then if the re is like your family law proceedings or injunction, it can be terrifying to open that up. And so it may actually slow your ex down. So you may have to, it may be better to not have a lawyer for a lot of this, or you can say to them, look, there's a letter coming. It's not bad news, but I'm going to step in and step out with my lawyer. They're going to do this letter, but don't worry about it. It's a good news thing for you.
Or, you write the letters, but you've had the legal advice,
Yeah.
So it's coming from you. It's coming from your email. It's coming from something that is less intimidating and a bit of gentle structure, and it might stop them from completely turning into a rock. So over-lawyering, as Mum said, it can slow the process.
Yep.
So, in those situations, you've got to think, is this going to make them more helpful or less helpful to getting this process done?
Can you imagine sending an avoidant person a massive, great document to fill in, and they can't handle it? You might be able to, if you haven't got a lawyer, you might be able to put the topic as, hey, I was just thinking about the boat or whatever, and that just softens it down. So,
and then we get to amicable. So when thinking about when to use your lawyer for amicable, if you're already in agreement, I have heard this a fair amount where they've gotten a lawyer to write a letter. Even though they're amicable, they've already kind of agreed on what's going to happen, and the lawyer writes the letter and it implodes. You went and saw a lawyer without me, or this lawyer, what are you lawyering up? This isn't great. And so sometimes it can inflame the situation or create conflict where there wasn't in the first place. Have you seen that?
I have, darling. I always used to say, and I do say still, I'm not going to turn your molehill into a mountain with the tone of the letter that I write. That's why I used to spend a bit of time tailoring the letter to the person I was writing to. But having said that, there's a certain element of things that must be spoken about. And so be careful if you believe you've got an amicable situation and they blow up because you went and saw a lawyer, then maybe it's not as amicable as you thought. An amicable person, you should be able to say, I'm going to run this by my lawyer without any problems.
So true. That is a good test to check if it is amicable. But if it is just a plain amicable and you're not too scared to just have a lawyer at all, if you educate yourself, get some strategic advice from a lawyer, maybe step in, step out, or see them 2 times, and then get them to review your agreement, then Bob's your uncle. You haven't spent a ridiculous amount of money on a full service lawyer. So you see how, depending on your divorce personality type, who you really do need to sit down and think about what type of lawyer and how you're going to use them. Now, the great part about all of this, if you haven't heard of it before, is we've got the DIY Divorce Blueprint, and it helps people to fill in the gaps. It supports you as you go through this process. We educate you on how to negotiate with these types of divorce personalities. We help you to prepare and see a lawyer those 2 crucial times so that you're not spending thousands of dollars on legal fees. We have many people, don't we, Mum, who actually have lawyers and they do use them as first-class ride lawyers, but they still use our course. And what are you finding out when you speak to those members, Mum? What are you finding out, those ones who do our course and have a lawyer?
Well, they find out pretty quickly that how expensive a lawyer is, and they learn not to ask them general questions that they've got from the course. They're much more efficient in their use of the lawyer. I think also by doing the course and educating yourself about family law and able to do the documents yourself, you can kind of project manage your lawyer. Even if you're getting full service, you can reality check them. You can suggest a different tone of letter for your ex, and you know when you can make an offer and when not. If you're the person being taken on the first card, right, you've chosen that. You can reality check your lawyer for some of the documents they're asking for, like Why would I need that? I have enough information. And there's a recent case, or last year, Addario and Addario, and that was the same, something where the wife had made an offer and the husband didn't accept it, and the court ordered that he pay some of her legal fees. But it was this back and forward stuff, not being sensible about things, and he just didn't cooperate during the proceedings. The husband rejected an offer from her that was a good offer, and we show you how to have a rough idea of an offer, and then you can go and get your work checked with the lawyer and put the offer in, and it may end up either ending your proceedings early or making them a lot cheaper, or you can use it at the end to get some costs back from your other party.
So it just helps you understand the process better because you're the expert in your case. So you understand the process better, you can prepare properly, because I'm just going to say it, sometimes I don't think lawyers give everybody's case the full attention that you really want them to, because they have 70,000 other cases as well. And that's just how it is. You will feel better in yourself. It helps you basically understand the process, so when you're making the decisions, you know what's coming next, you know what's going to happen. And then it gives you that option to use the lawyers full and guide the process, or choose to use them partially and save yourself some of the money, or choose to use lawyers as minimally, just in those two ways, and save a lot of money, but and hopefully get through it. Depending on your divorce personality type as well, the strategies you can take, it makes a real big difference.
Rosie, can I just say, do you think sometimes that people feel better once they see the whole process laid out and they can see where the end point is? And also, apart from feeling better, the light at the end of the tunnel, they are probably going to be more able to apportion their money and their energies and their resources to the bit that are needed, because everyone thinks they're not going to go to court. And then when they go to court, everyone thinks we're not going to trial. And then when you go to trial, everyone thinks the judgment will be my way.
Right back at the start, if I look back, I didn't know the process, and I didn't ask you questions about what's next. I was asking about what's happening now.
Yes.
And if I'd known what was next, like for example, disclosure, because listener today, you're probably a single parent, you're single parenting, you've probably got a job, and you're probably doing all of the things as well. And then this divorce stuff is on the side that you have to treat like a second job. You don't have time to be doing all this stuff at the drop of a hat. You might be doing soccer drop-off and kid pickup and cooking dinner. And then you get a letter from your lawyer saying, I need this information by tomorrow. I need this by tomorrow. That kind of stuff. If I'd known, okay, this is what is going to be required of me to present over as disclosure, I could have sat down at a time that worked for me to figure that stuff out and do it myself, as opposed to being asked. And then also, when it came to mediation, if I'd known the process of mediation, what happens if you fail, what happens if it doesn't fail, what happens in it, how to prepare for it, my mediation would have been a million times better. And my whole divorce process would have been a lot shorter and definitely a lot cheaper. So, I think understanding the process stops panic spending. That's what it is. Because, if you've got the money, you want to throw it at a lawyer to get it to go away. Please fix this. I want this fixed. But you can't control how your ex behaves, but you know how your ex is going to behave. And sometimes throwing money at them isn't necessarily the lawyer's not going to be able to control how your ex behaves either.
Yeah.
It's all about organisation, educating yourself and understanding the process and your ex and how it will all fit together. And that's why Mum and I did the whole course, because I was like, there's got to be a better way, because lawyers cost more and the divorce costs more when you're overwhelmed, you're disorganized, and you're reacting emotionally. That's the facts. And so our course helps you to become not overwhelmed because you're empowered by what you've learned. You're not disorganized because you're taking those proactive steps. You're not waiting for your lawyer to tell you what to do or your ex to tell you what to do. And you're reacting less emotionally because of the support you get with our support groups each week, but also because you understand it. Because if someone on the street stopped by and said, hey, do you know that in the Family Law Act, it says in property settlement that someone will get an extra percentage because of this? They would go, well, that sounds completely unfair. or not true. Do you know what I mean? And unless you understand it and get it, you will get upset. You will react. You will want to fight. But you'll be fighting over something that you wouldn't win. So you need to know what you can fight for and what you can't fight for.
And it's bizarre. We plan for weddings, right? We plan for ages for weddings. We've got the books. We've got magazine. We've got timetables. And
we've
we
got
all
fairy stories. You're learning about it from when you're a little kid, how to plan for a wedding.
And we all plan for children, right? How exciting. Getting ready for the baby. Those are very important things in your life. You know, you've never been taught in the periphery of your mind about how divorce works. People don't talk about it to kids, for instance. They don't talk about it to each other. If they are talking about it, you're getting sick of it. When it's your turn and you're going through it, you don't want to, put it all on them. And we're very unprepared for that, and we're even starting to prepare for death, right? With the Swedish death cleaning and the bottom drawer book and that. Why aren't we preparing? If there's a divorce and you're separating, most people, the separation could feel a little bit temporary and you're hoping you'll get back together again. But by gosh, start learning in case the worst happens. And if you're listening to us, your marriage isn't intact or your relationship is wobbly, I imagine.
Yeah.
But it's not our fault that we don't learn for it or plan. It's still a taboo subject. Even in 2026, it's still a taboo subject.
Yeah. And it's that unknown in any subject, in finances. If you don't understand how interest works or capital gains tax, you're going to get stung at the end of the financial year. It's the same for any process, any government situation. You need to understand it. And we're not saying don't use a lawyer. You don't need a lawyer. What we're saying is you don't need to use a lawyer for everything. You don't have to hand it over completely. We're also saying you don't have to do everything yourself. There's a middle ground. There's a middle way to get this done, a cheaper way, a less stressful way. And I think the reason we created it, Mum, is because there was nothing else there. There's no help for people going through this I'm a very social person. I didn't want to go through this on my own. But I didn't have anybody getting divorced in my friendship groups. None of my brothers or sisters are divorced. Apart from you, who got divorced in a different age and a different generation, I had nobody to talk to about this. I had no comparisons. And I know that's why we started the podcast. And then when I realized, okay, we need more, that's why we did the course, because I don't want anyone to go through this on their own.
And we hide it. I think, I did a settlement on the day of separation for conveyancing, and I think there is no one to talk to, but you're all smart enough to do it. You can say, I'm going to see my financial planner, or I'm going to the baby clinic, or I'm going to IVF clinic, whatever. But you don't say, I've got to go and see my divorce lawyer.
So what we're trying to help you with today is deciding whether you need a lawyer or not for your divorce. And the answer is you will at some point need to go see a lawyer, and you can choose that way. You can choose the first class ride, you can choose the step in, step out approach, or you can choose those two crucial times to go and see a lawyer. There will be people out there saying, well, I can't afford to see a lawyer at all. And luckily for you guys, there's legal aid and also community legal services.
Absolutely.
We've got a great episode about community legal services and how to use them. You can go listen to that. But if you are going through this journey and if you want to use your lawyer wisely, if you want to save your money so it's not just spent all on legal fees to get your outcome, please consider doing the DIY Divorce Blueprint. It is the only training of its kind that will take you step by step through what to do. And we show you in video lessons, templates, guides, checklists, everything we can imagine that you might need going through this process and keeping you out of court. That's the beauty of it. You get to come along weekly to our member Q&As. We have different member groups. You can come along, get to know other people, and we get to chat. Mum answers questions. We speak to experts. It's really a wonderful community, and it's something that has helped so many of our members. It's over 2,000 members to get through this process emotionally intact, financially intact, and a shorter drama. Like it is a long process for some people, but you can shorten the process, you can shorten the fees, and you can shorten the emotional damage if you do it with us, and we'll guide you as we call ourselves, your guides by your side. So
Yeah.
if you're interested, we have the course open for the moment. Enrollments are open until the 10th of June. If you're listening to this at the moment, we're in May 2026. So enrollments are open until the 10th of June. We don't take people all the time. That's why we open doors, we close doors, because we want to get to know you guys, help the groups through. So this is your opportunity to come in and join the groups and do the course and have a less painful process than it would be otherwise, and feel empowered, be educated. And the stories we hear from our members, Mum, don't we?
We do. And people say, oh, that's my ex.
Yes.
We do hear some things. But what I love best is like the groups have names and they've come on as a cohort. So we get to know them. They know each other, I guess. They use fake names, like Be Grateful.
Nicknames.
Nicknames. But it's wonderful how when they stop coming, it's because they've resolved their case. They've settled it. And we see them through it, you know.
And the questions from the questions at the start are different to the questions they ask at the end. And so over time, they all become more empowered and more brave, more educated, and we know that they're going to be okay.
You can tell, And you sometimes you might be a listener rather than say anything, but you recognise your case or your questions or issues in something someone else asks, and that helps you feel less alone. Sometimes I think people think their ex is the worst ex to ever walk the earth, and I'm here to tell you that you'll get through it no matter how bad they are. The court's dealt with this since 1976, so 50 years. They're not in for any shenanigans.
Yes. If you're interested, go to thedivorcecourse.com.au and click Enroll Now, and you can join for this. Just remember, we close enrollments on the 10th of June. We'd love to have you there. We only have limited amounts of space for members because there's only one mum and she can only do a certain amount of phone calls, and there's only one me. So we don't have space for massive amounts of people. So if you are interested, run in, get your spot now and click on that link, and you can learn more about it on the website. So thank you, Mum, for your time.
No worries, darling.
We will see you all next week.
Yes, and if anyone does join, I get to talk to them on the phone.
Yes. Okay, bye.
Bye, darling. Bye, everyone.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.